Hello world, welcome to another Breakout Finder videocast. This time, as you can see, we have brought on a phenomenal feature for you people. One of the top features in the world, in fact. And since this is also a podcast, I should say I'm Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageJew. With me, as usual, Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. And with us tonight, the man, the myth, the legend, JJ Zachariason, host of the Late Round podcast and living the stream. And what, you do work over at NumberFire and FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, so FanDuel acquired NumberFire like 3.5 years ago or so. So
Okay.
we're all a family. That's why I support the brand.
See that, man? The t-shirts.
Yeah. You know, this is just that's who I am now. I'm a company man.
You are a company man, and you can find him on Twitter at LateRoundQB. I would be surprised if you're not already following him. I would be very surprised if you're not. So let's kick this thing off. We don't like to waste time on this show. We don't mess around. We get right into it. We get down to business, and we're gonna mine JJ of just all the gems that are stored up there. And I think there's a lot, but we're gonna find out. All right, Ryan,
there's
take
a
us
lot.
in, man.
We were, boys. We were chatting offline a little before this, and the first thing, the first burning topic that we have queued up here for our guy JJ, man. Let's talk about DJ Moore, second year campaign, expectations, all that stuff. JJ, talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can't talk about DJ Moore. I was telling you guys this earlier. You can't talk about DJ Moore without talking about Curtis Samuel in some way, because a lot of people are comparing what happened last season with DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel and their production and how they were targeted and so on. I think it's a little bit unfair because DJ Moore was a rookie, Curtis Samuel was not. So I think that's important. But even still, when Cam Newton, when DJ Moore started seeing 50% or more of the Panthers snaps last season, which was at about week 8 through week 15 when Cam Newton was playing, he out-targeted Curtis Samuel straight up. So I mean, you can say what you want about targets. I'm a big proponent that targets are a skill statistic. They matter because you have to get open in order to be targeted in the first place. Really, at the end of the day, from a fantasy point standpoint, the difference between Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore was really the fact that DJ Moore couldn't find the end zone. So there's a little bit misfortune there, between the two guys. And I know that, this is kind of, we're comparing the two, but I think you kind of have to in this case. But between the two guys, DJ Moore is just the far better prospect, right? He had unbelievable college production, some of the best market share numbers you can possibly find. And he had a great breakout age as well. I think a lot of people just kind of typecast him and say that he's just, he's a Golden Tate type, or, he might not be able to play on the outside that much, or he might not be able to be that versatile. I don't really see that. I don't think that's the case. So I think if you're looking at like redraft ADP right now, and you're looking at DJ Moore versus Curtis Samuel, I think that it's very easy to see that both of them are draftable where they're being drafted. I think you can make the argument that Curtis Samuel is the better value. That's fine. That's just because of where his ADP is sitting right now.
Right.
But DJ Moore to me has the ceiling. Yeah. Curtis Samuel you might draft as a wide receiver 4. Maybe he becomes a low end wide receiver 2. In a scenario where DJ Moore doesn't necessarily break out. But DJ Moore has that lower end wide receiver 1, higher end wide receiver 2 upside. I think that's why you're drafting him where you're drafting him. And we saw signs of that. Remember that Lions game last year where he just went completely bonkers. So we saw signs of that. He's a great prospect. So I'm definitely into him being a second year breakout.
Yeah. So kind of a 2-part follow up here before we turn it over to Nate and his beautiful headband and his flowing locks this evening, man. So again, it's June, but we're talking 2 prospects here. We're talking ADP. How far? I mean, do you find yourself kind of in line with the DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel ADP? How far apart do you have them? And then kind of the burning question for both of them, for me at least, anyways, is we've heard it a lot over the past 24, 48 hours. Is Cam Newton post surgery looking good, but they're talking up his new throwing motion. If you're buying DJ Moore, you're buying Curtis Samuel, you have to be pretty confident about the guy under center. Are there any concerns about Cam Newton and kind of his post-surgery mechanics or whatever the case may be?
I'm not that concerned, mostly because it's not as though we're talking someone who had like precision accuracy or was this unbelievable passer in the first place. So I think that there's a little bit of margin for error there with Cam and his shoulder and his arm. So I'm not as worried. I don't think it's like an Andrew Luck situation either, which honestly could have ended up being more mental than anything else. We still don't really know what was going on there. So I'm not that worried about Cam. As far as their ADPs, like I said, I think that it's just easier to make the argument that Curtis Samuel is the better value just because of where he's going, right? Like it's really, it's not to say that I think that Curtis Samuel has the same type of ceiling that DJ Moore does, but I do think that you can easily make the argument that, the target share projections for a DJ Moore versus a Curtis Samuel, the difference might not be all that significant. The ceiling, the higher end in a reasonable range of outcomes for DJ Moore is a lot higher than Curtis Samuel, but a projection will make Curtis Samuel look better at his ADP than DJ Moore. I'm just looking at the broad range of outcomes, and I think that DJ Moore is still a very strong pick where he's being drafted right now.
Man, these takes are fire. It's hard for me to even say anything. I love DJ Moore. First off, I just want to say I'm a big fan of DJ Moore. I got to get that out there.
You look like you love DJ Moore right now.
No, I love DJ Moore and America equally, but here's the other thing. I'm also a fan of Curtis Samuel, and here's my thought. When Devin Funchess left Carolina, they were devoid a significant amount of targets. Devin Funchess had 79 last year. Obviously, Greg Olsen not totally healthy. Ian Thomas coming on. And this is a team in Carolina that was, I think, number 15 last year in pass attempts. Now, a big part of that is clearly Christian McCaffrey, 124 targets. I mean, there's very few running backs in the NFL, if any, that are ever going to be in that target range. But I think, like JJ said, there may not be a big difference in target share between DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, but I think there's truly a chance that we see Curtis Samuel get somewhere between 85 to 100 targets and DJ Moore find himself in that 120 to 135 target range. And that would still leave Christian McCaffrey in that 100, 115 range. So I like Curtis Samuel because I think the opportunity is going to be there. Carolina didn't do much to change this. He was one of the luckiest guys coming out of this draft. I love DJ Moore. I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for, similar to what JJ was saying. He's not a one-trick pony. But I'm a big fan of Curtis Samuel, and I think if we see Samuel do potentially a little more rushing, they may get him more involved in that sense where he was effective on the 8 carries he had last year. I would like to see him in sort of a Tariq Cohen kind of thing where they blend him a little bit more because I think he is really diverse. But when you've got a guy like Christian McCaffrey already coming out of the backfield, it really limits, I think, how dynamic they're going to try to use Curtis Samuel. So I believe we're going to see him with more downfield passing targets. And I'm buying. DJ Moore, clearly the alpha in this offense, but don't sleep on Curtis Samuel, man. And don't sleep on America.
Well said.
Thank you,
buddy.
So, all right, let's talk about this next thing. I want to transition to another running back who's had some issues, let's say, in Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb, fantastic last year as a rookie. JJ, question. Is Kareem Hunt any threat to Nick Chubb's long-term value?
I kind of look at this as like, if there's another RB2 on that Browns roster, a random RB2 who doesn't have the name that Kareem Hunt has, doesn't have the profile that Kareem Hunt has on the field, would we sit here and say, is that person a threat to Nick Chubb? And our answer would be no, if it's just some random RB2, right? So I think that the answer to this has to be yes, more than the typical RB2 would on a team, right? From a depth chart perspective. And I think the fear with Hunt, I think that there's still the possibility that Kareem Hunt ends up not being a Cleveland Brown like even late in the season / after the season concludes. I don't think he's necessarily locked into this role, but we have to. The problem I have with Nick Chubb in general is something that Kareem Hunt helps cap, and that's his receiving upside, right? He showed his receiving, like he has the ability to be a pass catcher, right? That's not really my concern. It sort of was coming out just because of how he was used at Georgia, but the way that this Browns offense looks right now. When you add an elite talent, I know that a lot of people, including Matt Kelly at times, will talk about how you can't divvy up the pie when it comes to target share, and you can't you shouldn't always look at things that way. But when you take an elite asset like OBJ, he's going to see a massive target share. I don't care where he is. He's going to demand at least 25% of the team's targets. So all of a sudden you add that piece, that hurts everyone else on that team from a target standpoint. You can't, you cannot argue that point. And that will hurt someone like Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb last season, when he was the starter, he was seeing about 8-ish% of the team's targets. Not that bad. They should be a fairly pass-heavy team with Todd Monk in there and the way that they want to run that offense. Duke Johnson's still there though too, which is another issue. And Kareem Hunt, you look at how efficient he's been as a receiver, and that to me is the fear. It's not really the spelling Nick Chubb, whenever he's getting tired and later in games, or Kareem Hunt coming in at the goal line. That wouldn't make any sense. It's really the receiving upside. So I think the answer to this is yes, if you're comparing comparing Kareem Hunt to a typical, second running back on a team like an Elijah McGuire or something.
Oof. What do you got? Oh, the Elijah McGuire bomb at the end.
Right, I don't even know. Those are the first depth chart running back I could think of was Elijah McGuire.
Just caught us straight, dude. We're like 5 minutes into the show.
Oh, shit, Ryan, what's your take on this? How do you feel about Kareem Hunt and the Nick Chubb scenario? Are you not concerned, or?
I think I'm gonna go kind of narrative street on you guys. Obviously John Dorsey had the connection with Kareem Hunt back to Kansas City, went out of his way to obviously sign him amidst all this, all the off the field stuff. So Dorsey certainly, saw what he did in Kansas City. Obviously, talent aside, on the field aside, he was willing to kind of take that calculated risk, so to speak, to even carry him on the roster. So I think there's some sort of faith, some sort of trust there, which is a shame because I am a Nick Chubb fan. I agree with everything that JJ kind of laid out there, especially going back to on the field as far as the differences in receiving ability. We can talk about their differences as athletes and kind of how that might separate them as well. But yeah, I think long term you kind of have to be a little bit kind of hesitant. I kind of want to dial it back in and talk from a season-long kind of redraft standpoint. His FFPC ADP, courtesy of our friends over at Player Profile right now, has him inside the second round. Are you considering investing in Nick Chubb that early, JJ? Are you kind of staying away, letting someone else kind of quote unquote make that mistake, or just kind of worried about again Kareem Hunt coming on towards the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of game format that you're playing. Like I've done best ball drafts where Nick Chubb, I think, is the type of best ball player that you would want, not only because he has a crazy touchdown ceiling. Let's get that out of the way. The touchdown ceiling is certainly there, and you don't have to predict when those touchdowns are going to happen. Not that you would ever bench Nick Chubb, but if you look at what his ceiling could be, it could be that they don't use Kareem Hunt that much when he comes back. It could be that they trade Duke Johnson. It could be that he actually maintains that target share that he had last season. And if that's the case, Nick Chubb has top 5 upside at the position, straight up. And so that's why I think that draft position makes a ton of sense. I didn't think it was going to be where it's at because he's basically like a fringe RB1. He's a lower end RB1, and that's actually where I think, not to derail the topic, but that's actually where I think around the cutoff is for where Todd Gurley then gets looked at, just because you have that true workhorse top 5 upside with a guy like Nick Chubb, and it would be hard then to kind of overcome that opportunity cost in getting someone like Gurley. That's just kind of the way that I look at Nick Chubb's situation in general, is that he does have that upside.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, man, you've got to be a fan of what's going on. What's scary too, though, and I'm not that concerned, honestly, about Kareem Hunt overall, because they drafted Nick Chubb, they invested highly in him. He's proven to be great, in his limited opportunities here in 1 year. But he's shown that he can carry the load, similar to what we saw from Kareem Hunt. Multiple games over 20 carries, multiple 100-yard games, can catch the ball, super athletic. What's weird to me, though, is how close they are in age. They're barely 4 months apart in age. And that means, Kareem Hunt's relatively young. They're both under 24 years old. But I think as a long-term asset in Cleveland, knowing Duke Johnson wants out, he's been vocal about it. We all love Duke Johnson, right? It's be like a Duke Johnson truthers thing here. We all love him, right? Like, put our hands in the middle. I'm a big fan, but he has to go, right? Like, he wants to get out of there. The NFL's turned into more of a trade-happy league. I've got a feeling that he does go if Kareem Hunt and the suspension talk, because none of that's official yet, right? So Who knows? I'm a fan of Nick Chubb, and I'd be buying him wherever I could because, like JJ said, his ceiling is top 5, easily top 5. I'm looking forward to this year. So, okay, wow, this is another one. This is a player that I think everybody's a fan of. Similar to Curtis Samuel, big hype around him right now. Kerryon Johnson, that's a thing right now. Right now. Do we care? Are you buying him? Do we like him? Do we not like him? Or yeah, JJ.
I liked Kerryon coming out a good bit, so I have a good bit of him and had him last year as well. Not that anyone really cares about my fantasy leagues. It's just just a way to introduce the topic and let you guys know that I do like Kerryon Johnson. The thing that I like though about guys like Kerryon Johnson is that their ceilings aren't even close to being projected or embedded in their value and in their ADP. And what I mean by that is, where Kerryon Johnson gets drafted is generally under the impression or under the thought that he's not going to be this 260 plus carry, 80 plus target player where he does, people assuming that he doesn't have that top 5 upside. So I think that's what's at least a little bit alluring about someone like Johnson and his cost. So I think his redraft price and his dynasty price is pretty fair as a result of that. I think that the obvious concern with Kerryon is his goal line work. Not because I think that Darrell Bevell is necessarily this horrible thing for him.
He's terrible.
But I'm concerned. I think here's the deal. If you have a run first coordinator, and if you have that team's running back, you absolutely need that player to see goal line touches because we know that targets are more valuable than rushes are. We know Kerryon Johnson is going to be the primary pass catcher. I mean, Theo Riddick aside, we know that they use him in weird ways. But that Kerryon Johnson from an overall what he is and what he projects to be standpoint is the pass catching running back on that team. And so if a team is going to start running the ball more, that means that you're not going to see as much volume through the air out of your running back, which means what you need out of your running back is rushing touchdowns. You absolutely need those rushing touchdowns. And that's really the fear. I mean, you can look at Seattle last season. They were 6th in the NFL last year because of that run first approach. They were 6th in the NFL in scoring and fantasy scoring, and their running backs were, but they had 15 rushing touchdowns. That was a huge part of it. They were 30th in receptions. I'm not saying that Bevell was the coordinator last season. I'm just using this as an example as to what can happen when your running backs are basically making a living in fantasy off of scoring touchdowns, and they're not seeing that much work through the air. When those touchdowns aren't there, if the offense doesn't perform well, and if your guy isn't the one getting those goal line touches, then all of a sudden your fantasy asset has an RB2 ceiling. And that's the real fear for me with Kerryon. I love him as a talent. The CJ Anderson signing kind of scares me a little bit, at least in the short term. That's the main reason to not like him. But like I said, I think that things can still break his way to where he exceeds his ADP and where it's at right now. It's just a very, very difficult situation to read.
Oh, God, things got so dark so fast.
I know.
I feel like I got to go sell Kerryon Johnson literally everywhere now. I'm going to make a trade while this show is going. Ryan, what is your take on Kerryon Johnson? Should we be worried about Zach Zenner?
I'm with JJ. If I'm beginning CJ Anderson, that definitely kind of raises some eyebrows. I think for me, man, it's a little more straightforward. Like I don't know if I like Patricia, like the coach. I'm not sure. I'm really, again, I was buying Galladay everywhere last year. We have the Galladay fan with us right now, so I do like pieces of that offense. But in general, I have some reservations. I have some hesitations. I was listening to, I think it was a Fantasy Pros pod a couple days ago, Mike Taggs, Pat Fitz, and then I think they might have dropped a quote somewhere along the line saying that Kerryon Johnson himself came out and said, and again, I might be speaking out of context here, and maybe this quote never happened or I misinterpreted or whatever the case may be, but Kerryon Johnson himself came out and said that he didn't envision himself as a true 3-down runner. And again, kind of take that for whatever it is. Again, because I liked him coming out of school. I thought he more or less kind of profiled like that. Last year, notched 32 receptions, so we know he can kind of get it done on the ground, in the air. Overall, his profile is one you kind of gravitate towards. But again, I kind of just have some reservations about that offense in general. Stafford under center, kind of up and down. And again, just that coaching staff in general. Like I understand the allure. He might be a player for me though, personally, that I'm kind of letting someone else invest.
My goodness, what you guys, this is crazy right now. There's just so much dark cloud. Just, I don't know, man. I'm not feeling positive right now. I don't feel good about this. I do like Kerryon Johnson because, Detroit came out and said they're going to have an emphasis on the run. Apparently they don't want to throw the ball, even though they should be throwing the ball a lot more. But Kerryon Johnson was really good last year in only 10 games. We saw almost 40 targets out of him. I mean, I hate to extrapolate statistics, but we're talking about borderline 200 carries. We're talking about, nearly 60, 70, targets. I'm with JJ, though. It does matter. The touchdowns do matter. I still think that Kerryon Johnson's going to have a role in the passing game. CJ Anderson worries me a little bit, but we see this all the time in the NFL. Teams are adding veteran depth. CJ Anderson, he extended his life, right? What he did with the LA Rams, he gave himself life. I thought CJ Anderson was gone. I've never been a CJ Anderson truther. I'm still not a CJ Anderson truther. But he extended it, and they looked at that like, okay, let's put a veteran that's still got some juice, behind Kerryon. But Kerryon, if he did come out and say that, come on, bro, what are you, afraid of a promotion? Just go out and take the job. I mean, you came out last year, 5.4 yards per carry. He was great. 32 receptions and limited work as a rookie in the NFL on an offense that didn't look good. I mean, there was problems all over this Detroit offense. And I'm a fan of him going forward as a guy that's still really, really young. Kerryon Johnson's not even 22 years old yet, going into his sophomore season in the NFL. So that's another something to pay attention to. Detroit put a lot of draft stock into him, traded up to get him. So there's a lot of positive signs. I'm with you on the statistics because that's what matters. We're doing fantasy football, right? The numbers do matter. But there are a lot of arrows that point at reasons why Kerryon Johnson should be somebody you're going after. Problem is, price tag's way up right now, so you're not going to get him for cheap. But someone that you might get for cheap, Royce Freeman in Denver. JJ, tell me about Royce Freeman.
Yeah, man, production freak. We like to see that out of our running backs. So coming out, a lot of us probably liked him, I would assume. And then Philip Lindsay came and stole the show and did his thing. Also a production freak, to be fair. I mean, Philip Lindsay was very, very underrated in college. I like him a lot more at ADP, at value, than I do Philip Lindsay. I think that's really what you're looking at here, not unlike the DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel thing. I think that Philip Lindsay's a sell, so that makes Royce Freeman a buy. And you can, I think it's sort of like, you can just look at the Lindsay argument and then therefore you're buying the Royce Freeman argument. We know he's the bigger bodied guy. We know that he has a great production profile. He can be the goal line guy in that offense. He's not a bad pass catcher. So you can put all that aside and then just look at Philip Lindsay himself. Philip Lindsay has the 5.4 yards per carry average. I think if you're buying into Philip Lindsay, you're basically saying, hey, this guy's going to be Jamal Charles. And it's like, I don't know if
feels like a stretch.
Yeah, I don't know if we should be buying into or saying that this guy's going to be the most efficient running back of all time. And look, last season, Denver was 6th in adjusted line yards. So that was definitely helpful for, and that's according to Football Outsiders. That's definitely helpful for Philip Lindsay. He was actually one of the worst backs in yards after contact and elusive rating, according to Pro Football Focus. He's already going to be 25 years old. Philip Lindsay is. He's not a young dude either. And then the size concerns are always going to be there. So I think that all of the concerns for Philip Lindsay, there are positives and plus for Royce Freeman. That just makes Royce Freeman an obvious buy in my eyes. And then there's already some folks out of Denver saying that Royce Freeman could just steal this job this year, which I think is not wouldn't be a surprise to folks who've been watching Royce Freeman or don't like Philip Lindsay. But for them to be talking about it right now, I think Philip Lindsay's been banged up, but for them to be talking about it right now, at least is telling as to what we could be watching out for as we hit July and August.
Ryan, what do you got on Royce Freeman? I know JJ pretty much said everything there is to say about him and Philip Lindsay, but if you got to take, maybe even about DeVante Parker in there, you want to squeeze him in, shoehorn him in. What do you got, bro?
I've got zero DeVante Parker takes, but unlike Johnson, man, and a couple of those other players we'd had before, Royce Freeman is a guy that I am, again, JJ said it very, very, very eloquently. I'm buying Royce Freeman, man. Again, I'm gonna drop I'm gonna buy into all the coach speak and coaching nuggets that are coming out of camp, man. Cecil, it might have been him a couple days ago on June 5th saying that Royce Freeman was looking swift as a receiver in Denver, man. So again, I think it's the throne is there. for the taking, man. And it could be as early as maybe the first quarter of the season.
I can't figure out how Philip Lindsay did it. Like it boggles my mind. Like where he came from. It doesn't make sense, right? And what he did. I think the refresher for people. We've seen Freeman in the NFL a little bit, but man, you got to go back to college to really understand what Royce Freeman was. This is a guy that rushed for over 5,600 yards.
Prolific.
Yeah, prolific. 26 catch season with 13.4 yards per reception. This is a guy that was a focal point of the offense at Oregon, and he brings a lot of those same skill sets to Denver. I'm a fan of him. I don't think Lindsay holds up. I think you have to sell high on Lindsay. Even if Lindsay can keep up the production, and I hate to be a guy that tries to bet on injury because that's one of the dumbest things you can do. But the reality is, like JJ said, either you're Jamal Charles and somehow you're elusive enough that you never get injured over the course of your career at 190 pounds, or you flat get railroaded and you're out for some time and Royce Freeman takes over this job. Now, here's my concern. I think that Philip Lindsay, you can't put him back in the bottle. I think he showed too much. So even as a part-time player, I think that he could vulture some work from Royce Freeman because I think that Philip Lindsay is talented enough. But I think ideally Royce Freeman would be your lead back. He can be a hammer. He's got some shiftiness. He's functional in the pass game. He's athletic enough. He brings so many tools to this offense that I think that they need, that he should be the guy going forward, but my fear is that Philip Lindsay will be involved no matter what. But I'm with you. At Royce Freeman's price tag, why are you not buying him? Everybody should be all over him. But JJ, hey, let's get to one last running back. I got a burning question for you.
I hate this.
I mean, I'm sure you've heard of a guy named Alexander Madison. Is that correct? Do you know who that is? Apparently he got drafted. Huge mistake by Minnesota. Probably set themselves back like a decade. But here's the real question. With Dalvin Cook's injury history, are you buying Madison? And if so, man, what do you expect out of him, really? What do you expect out of Madison? Anything?
I mean, I definitely wasn't like can you be into Alexander Madison? Like, is that?
Yes.
Is it?
Oh,
yes.
Can you be into him?
No.
So no, I didn't mind. He's whatever from a prospect standpoint. The one thing I will say with someone like him, this is to a greater degree, like a Damian Harris, from a value standpoint. If you look back at rookie drafts and you look at the second round and the third round of rookie drafts, where breakout running backs come from are guys who have good draft capital, period. It doesn't matter who they are, what they did. You're going to find like a second round, especially over the last 10 years, second round running backs who have good draft capital, who didn't go in the first round of rookie drafts. Those players had like a 50% hit rate in terms of having at least one or two decent seasons. So that I think is really what you're kind of buying into here above all else. I'm still a big Dalvin Cook guy. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be fine. I'm not really going to buy into the injury stuff all that much. But that's really my complex take, is that draft capital still matters.
My problem is I had this big flag and it was so heavy, right? And I got to the top of the hill and I just jabbed it into the ground as hard as I could. And at this point, I can't get off the hill. I'm up there now. I've said too much. I said he should have gone undrafted. He went in the third round. The NFL clearly doesn't listen to my podcast or anything that I tweet. That's fine. They're missing out. You can find me on Twitter. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of his opportunity, right? We should not play into Dalvin Cook's injury history, but he's a player that's had injuries, and there's nobody aside from Dalvin Cook in front of him. And this is a team that wants to run the ball. I know Michael Boone is there, and people have talked about him basically just to spite Alexander Madison, right? I mean, but when you have, exactly like you said, the draft capital built in, there that proves that the team wanted you, they've invested in you, the opportunity's likely there. If Dalvin's healthy, you can shelf Alexander Madison. I'm shelving him anyways. Even if Dalvin goes down, I'm not starting him, just out of principle. I'll leave that running back slot open. But anyways, no, I'm with you. I think the opportunity is good. But Dalvin Cook is a clear feature back in the NFL. Ryan, I know you stood up against me and Matt Kelly, even though we lobbed grenades at you over Alexander Madison. Told you were wrong. Told you he was getting undrafted. He did not go undrafted. Still not sure if you're right. What's your take on Alexander Mattison?
No, I kind of laid down the blueprint last week when we talked about the third tier of kind of dynasty, my dynasty rookie rankings. Man, again, as JJ said, draft capital matters, and as you kind of alluded to, outside of Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison, there's a whole lot of really nothing in that Minnesota backfield. So again, not even we don't want to talk about injuries, especially injuries to any player, but to let alone a player with such impact and ceiling as Dalvin Cook. But if he goes down, man, it could quickly become the Alex Madison show. And I say that as a Alex Madison fan, also as a Mike Boone fan as well. But again, man, I think draft capital and potential opportunity. It's just there's a big red flashing light there for me that says bye.
Man, I'm just concerned. I don't know what it is, man. That physique, it's your typical. It's got a dad bod. That's what I think. Got a little bit of a dad bod. And speaking of a dad bod, summer's just around the corner, JJ. Are you doing any trimming up, or are you just hitting the pools this summer all natural? What's the plan?
All natural, man. I'm officially a dad this year, so I gotta go all natural.
All right. Yeah, man. Good for you. How's that going?
It's great. Got a 10-month-old. She's the best.
Heck yeah, man. The dad bod, it's tough to deal with, but it's really popular right now, like Alexander Mattison is. And
yeah, right.
Yeah,
makes sense.
There's that correlation. What about you, Ryan? It's summertime, man. Are you hitting the elliptical machine? What are you doing?
Heavy cardio for your boy. Heavy cardio for your boy.
Sweat, sauna suit, getting out there, just cutting weight.
Just covered in plastic bags in the sauna, just thriving.
Gotta make that weight class. All right, man. It was hot today. I will admit it was hot. Okay, holy shamoly. Speaking of hot, DeVante Parker, stellar camp again. Is this the year for DeVante Parker? Is this the breakout? JJ, is he breaking out? We gotta know.
Hell yeah, man. No, it's not happening. It's not happening. Not happening. I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm sorry. It's not going.
This is the one. This is the one.
Here's the thing. Players like this, okay, where there's let's say you have some hope. When these guys end up, like, in the rare occasion that they actually break out, when they're on a team like Miami, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't. If DeVante Parker is great this year, it's not going to matter. Miami's probably projected to have one of the lowest touchdown totals in the league this season. So I think that's really, like, you can buy in a DeVante Parker from, like, let's just, maybe you're holding on hope for that you've been holding on to for the last 5 years, talent-wise.
So tightly.
Right. But the way I look at it is like, okay, if DeVante Parker hits, what's that going to do for your fantasy team? And the answer, I think, is he's probably going to have, like, if we were to assume that DeVante Parker was good, where would he be drafted in, like, a redraft league right now? And it would probably be around where, like, a Kenny Stills is being drafted right now, maybe a little bit higher. And is that something that you need to, like, really buy into or really get excited about, because it's fairly replaceable? So that's kind of the way that I look at it. It's kind of I feel like it's a fairly level-headed take, but that's kind of where I'm at with a guy like Parker.
We don't do level-headed around here, JJ. We're not talking level-headedness over here.
I try to please both sides. Some people do call me the Joe Biden of fantasy football.
Wow, America. Here's the issue. Okay, number one, we got a quarterback controversy going on in Miami.
They both stink, right? Is that the controversy?
Whoa.
Give me Fitzpatrick over Josh Rosen for fantasy purposes all day long.
Come on, bro. Ryan Fitzmagic, we don't even know if he comes out guns blazing like last time, 17 touchdowns in 3 games. You don't know what he's going to do. DeVante Parker will be the recipient of none of those touchdowns, so I can guarantee you that.
It's a shame.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. DeVante just has not lived up to the draft capital. My God. I don't know what happened here. Obviously there was some stuff going on between Miami and DeVante about why he wasn't playing in the past. This is a guy that just has not succeeded in Miami. It's unfortunate that he stuck around there. I wish he would have gone. I was hoping he would go to Seattle at one point. Obviously, Seattle was smart enough to not reach for him. But when you look at the Miami Dolphins, man, this is a team that is just super duper dysfunctional. And like JJ said, with the quarterback situation, I mean, they were number 30 in pass attempts last year. You bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I actually like. I mean, I don't hate Fitzpatrick. For fantasy purposes, you got to like him. He's going to sling the ball around. He's been in the league a long time. He's been successful in a lot of spots. I'm not really excited about Josh Rosen. I think as soon as Rosen gets in there, we got problems. But as far as DeVante Parker, I mean, he might only be a best ball asset. I'm not a fan of owning him in Dynasty. If I'm grabbing him in redraft, he's going to be somewhere late. I actually prefer Kenny Stills, like JJ had mentioned. Kenny Stills has the higher floor to me, just a more consistent player over his career. I was a big fan of Parker coming out of college. You know, I got another flag up there next to that Madison flag, and I jammed that one in pretty far also. So I can't let go hope. But I think the reality is that there's not a lot of room, you know, there's not a lot of people on this depth chart, right? It's pretty barren. So if it's going to happen, it's got to happen this year, right? And if it doesn't happen this year, I don't know what to tell you about DeVante Parker, but it's not going to be in Miami. And I'm concerned with the future quarterback play, man. I don't think you can buy him at anything, you know, later than a late pick. I mean, if you were buying him, if you were selling in Dynasty right now, what would you take for DeVante Parker? I mean, mid to late 2, you'd sell him if you could
Easy.
get that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at as well. I'm looking to sell DeVante Parker, especially if there's some hype building around him right now. Okay, there's a question in here. Clearly, Ryan wrote it. It's got parentheses and brackets.
Yeah, it's super
and hyphens.
fancy.
Ryan, you read this one. There's too much
fancy.
going on here.
It's super fancy. No, hey, listen, we're gonna go back to kind of the start of the show here, talking about DJ Moore. I want to know from JJ, Nate, you can chime in too towards the end,
ready.
buddy, but I want to know, are there any other second or third year players like we saw with Tyler Boyd last year, going into his third year, that are ready, that are poised, that are itching, that are just right there, breakout?
Yeah, I mean, like the obvious like third-year breakout is Chris Godwin, the very, very obvious one. I don't know. Some people are pretty against his ADP right now. I saw some tweets about Corey Davis versus Chris Godwin and Godwin being higher from a dynasty standpoint, which I'm fully on board with. I think his redraft ADP makes a ton of sense. Again, we talked about this Tampa Bay offense already. I think so, but we talked about the Browns offense.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Todd Monken. But with Bruce Arians, it's going to still be a vertical passing attack. No D-Jacks anymore. Obviously, Evans is the alpha there, but you still have a ton of target share to give to Chris Godwin. He still has a 25% target share upside very, very easily in that offense. I mean, the two guys, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, could easily combined for half of the targets in Tampa Bay this year. They don't have a running back that can catch passes out of the backfield. They obviously have OJ Howard. They have question marks at the number 3 spot with their wide receivers. It's not out of the question that we could see something like that happen. So I'm buying into Chris Godwin. He makes a lot of sense. I think, maybe some of the under the radar guys, I think that you could just take a dart throw and look at the guys in Green Bay, whether that's MVS or whether it's Equanimeous St. Brown, just because obviously the opportunity is there and who we're dealing with Aaron Rodgers. There's a new offense that they're putting into place there. So he's a little bit interesting. I'm still not against James Washington either. I also have Christian Kirk on here, but I'm going to skip that over just because it's a more obvious one. But I still, rookie wide receiver struggled. But James Washington struggled last year. James Washington was not very good with the opportunity that he had with Pittsburgh. But there's obviously a ton of upside with that number 2 spot in that Steelers offense. And he can hypothetically be the burner that he was in a way in college. I do think that Dante Moncrief has that same ability to stretch the field. But James Washington's someone who, you have the narrative with him. He was working out on the farm all off season. So that's a plus.
America, man. That's what it's all about. Can't wait.
trimmed a little weight. He's trying to just be that speedster on the outside because they need that very badly. I mean, that people obviously Antonio Brown can do everything, but Antonio Brown played that role very well, obviously with Pittsburgh, and he was able to extend plays down the field. So I think James Washington at least has that potential. Obviously, a lot of opportunity sitting there in Pittsburgh, and I liked him a lot as a prospect. Unbelievably productive prospect. So he's another guy that I'm at least keeping an eye out on for this year.
Oh my! Well, here's one.
Gems,
and I don't know if people feel like he did or didn't. I don't think he did comparative to Chris Godwin. Cortland Sutton in Denver. I know that I'm not a fan of Joe Flacco. Where Flacco goes, receivers die. I mean, that's just the reality. Tight ends, elevate them. Fant might be a guy you want to own. But the thing for me in Denver is that there's not a lot of competition for targets. Last year, Cortland Sutton only saw 84. The likelihood that we see him rise somewhere over 100 is definitely in the potential. His catch rate was low, but this is a guy that came from a smaller school that we expect to see some development from. He's got the physical tools. He's got the size. And now he's with a veteran quarterback. And I'm not a fan of Flacco, but Flacco's not afraid to let it rip. And I think that's a good thing for Cortland Sutton, especially a guy that we expect a little more out of. But 16.8 yards per reception, man. He made some big plays last year. So I think that Cortland Sutton is a guy that you've got to be looking at. He's not getting much conversation right now. And I think Denver did some things to shore up that offense. And this might be a year where we see him take a big step forward. What do you got, Ryan? Have you got a name? I mean, you wrote the question. You got to have a name.
Nah, hey, JJ led in with my guy as well, man. Chris Godwin, bro. On days when I'm not feeling too well, I kind of sit down at my desk here, bro. I pull up the player profiler page. I type in Chris Godwin, man, and I'm immediately happy and relieved, man. He's a pretty sterling profile, super balanced, man. 67th percentile college dominator, 95th percentile Spark X score, man. 6'1", 209. JJ did kind of hit on his 5th round ADP right now. That's his FFPC ADP courtesy of player profile again here. So again, maybe too rich for some folks, and there are other kind of good fallback options. Again, JJ kind of alluded to him, but whether it's James Washington, Christian Kirk, Nate, I know you're the Christian Kirk guy this year. So there are other directions that you can go, but I just, again, going back to Chris Godwin coming out of school, man, huge fan of his profile and the way that this offense kind of sets up around him now. So with Arians there and everything, so the stars are aligning for Chris Godwin. He's my Tyler Boyd kind of breakout candidate this year as well. So it's good to hear that JJ's on board as well.
I mean, yeah, you just spiked his ADP is what just happened. I mean, it's
JJ.
That's the problem.
You got the JJ bump there.
I'm honestly confused though why people aren't like. Is it the Mike Evans effect? Like, is that why people are afraid of Chris Godwin? Like, why? This is the type of opportunity that we see like in Minnesota, right? Where you can have these two wide receivers that are this 1A, 1B, where maybe it's a larger discrepancy, but even still, where they can see 50% plus of the team's targets. But this is an offense with a DGAF quarterback with an offense that's going to throw the ball down the field. And Chris Godwin, I mean, he's going to be able to play all over the field. He's going to be able to play in the slot. He's going to be able to play on the outside. I don't see the argument really against Chris Godwin, especially, even if you're comparing him to an alpha on another team that isn't nearly as pass friendly / fantasy fortunate as what we're going to get in Tampa Bay, like a Corey Davis, like I mentioned earlier. It's just an easy buy right now.
And Mike Evans is so wildly inefficient, though. I mean, he's always had volume on his side, man. Nobody's had more volume and opportunity than Mike Evans. It's the reason that he's cracking 1,000 yards every year. I mean, the guy's had 170 targets in a year. The least he's ever had is 122. I don't even know if DJ Moore's going to see 122 this year. It's fucking crazy. Well, there goes the F-bomb. The point is, though, sorry, get me all fired up right now.
I was expecting at least 2 or 3 of them with the headband look tonight, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm just gonna keep going.
I'm just gonna keep getting you fired up. I'm gonna have a question after we start talking about each question just to get you fired up.
I don't want to drive up the stereotype, but the point is, that there's been so much opportunity. And like JJ said, look, we've seen Mike Evans kind of settle into this 130 to 140 target range. There's absolutely room for Chris Godwin to find his place in there, 120 targets. And he's a much more efficient receiver. And, I wonder if Tampa Bay is going to dial up more to him, just knowing what he does for this offense. It's a plus. Yes, it's great to throw the ball, but inefficiently moving the ball, just chucking targets up to Mike Evans and praying to God he can out-jump a DB or whatever the hell it is he does downfield. I mean, he a career high in yards per reception last year, almost 18. So the role is changing. I'm a fan of Godwin, and there's so much hype around him right now. He's going to be a tough piece to buy, but I think you push your chips in and you go after him because this is going to be the year. I'm totally with you, man. Okay, speaking of the year, Damien Williams. This is a name that we've heard all off season. I will not drop an F-bomb during the Damien Williams segment. Are you buying him in season long or dynasty? What's his value? What do you expect out of him this year?
So when Carlos Hyde signed with Kansas City, I saw that as a big win for Damien Williams. And I took a lot of crap for that. But I saw it as a big win because when you get a guy like Carlos Hyde in your roster, you know that he's a Jag. Like, we know that Carlos Hyde, we're talking about a guy, he was a Jag too.
He listens to this podcast.
we're talking about someone who was first traded last season and then cut by Jacksonville. So he's been traded and cut in a year. He's going to be 29 years old in September. So he's older than Damien Williams. I don't know what Carlos Hyde has shown you. Not only that, his final year in San Francisco, everyone makes a big deal out of it. It was all volume-based. Everything that he did was volume-based in San Francisco. So when Carlos Hyde signed, my thought was, now they're not going to use a high-equity pick on a running back in the draft, right? There's not going to be some real competition for Damien Williams. Then what they did was they went out and got Darwin Thompson, who everyone is just losing everything over right now, over this guy that no one even knew before the draft started.
Still don't know
at least 95% of people didn't know. And look, this isn't me saying that like someone like Darwin Thompson or Carlos Hyde can't break or can't come through and at least steal some looks from Damien Williams. But the argument against Williams is that it's Damien Williams. He's been a journeyman in a way. Why would we be buying into that? Well, we're buying into it because of the depth chart on Kansas City and the fact that Damien Williams was freaking unbelievable when he stepped in that offense. He fit so well in that offense last season, and when they did give him volume, he was legit top 5-ish. Like if you were to, not that I do this, but if you were to extrapolate what he did, and at the end of the season and in the playoffs, I mean, you're looking at a legit top 5 running back in fantasy football. Yep. And there's when you're talking about someone, because I get it, like there's a lot of question marks around Damien Williams. We should be worried about Damien Williams the player, but we should only be worried about Damien Williams the player if there was if the context showed us that there were other good pieces in that offense that's going to take away some volume from him. So at least in the short term, at least this year, I'm into Damien Williams. I think Damien Williams should finish as a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 in redraft, or in fantasy, but for redraft purposes, you can draft him where he's being drafted. I think he's a little bit undervalued at times. And then from a dynasty standpoint, I think it's a pretty clear, cut and dry way of handling him, where if you don't have a competitive team, you can feel free to sell him. If you have a competitive team, you can feel free to buy him. And I think that's the easy way to approach Damien Williams this season.
I'm with you on that too, man. I think that's the important context. When we talk about dynasty, Damien Williams, although he was great, he is absolutely 100% replaceable in this offense. As an undrafted free agent, your lifespan in the NFL is nil, unless you're Arian Foster or one of these guys. And Damien Williams is great. Don't get me wrong. He could be great, and he could end up continuing this run. I mean, he's 27, so there's not a lot of years left. But as an undrafted player, I'm with you, man. If you're a competitive team and you're looking to win, push a chip in there, talk with the other owner. I'm sure they're going to understand, look, Damien Williams is not a forever thing. But they're not going to sell him cheap, because I'm going to put you over a barrel, too. When Dalvin Cook goes down and you didn't handcuff him to Alexander Madison, you didn't handcuff him, and now you need a back, and you come to me about Damien Williams. Well, guess what? My people want to be paid, and Damien Williams is going to cost you. But the thing is, I would be concerned long-term that he gets replaced. But at least for now, in 2018, with the 2 running backs, at least by name, that got added in this draft class between Darwin Thompson and James Williams, I'm not worried. Carlos Hyde behind him, just like you said. I'm not worried. This is his year. And if he puts up low-end RB1 numbers, you probably got him for nothing if you own him right now. So just run with it. And if you're a non-playoff team getting close to that time of the year and you want to sell him off, then do it, because hedge your value at that point. Take your mid to late first or whatever you can get for him in Dynasty and roll with it, because he was one of the best pickups that you could have gotten last year. Because I'm with you, man. If you extrapolate, and I don't do it either, hand to God, if you extrapolate what he did, man, he was pretty impressive. Ryan, there's no air left in the room. What do you got? I
mean, again, you two have done a nice job of covering literally everything, man. I mean, again, from a redraft standpoint, you have to be interested in him. You know what I mean? Kansas City's actions made it clear that, again, they're going to run this offense through him. They went out and drafted a couple, change of pace runners. Was James Williams even drafted, or was he an undrafted guy?
No, he was undrafted.
Undrafted guy. So again, behind him is just a bunch of change of pace backs, if that, kind of plus pass catchers.
I will say the one thing about Damien Williams that is very, very interesting is that usually when you have such a split, you're going to have some ambiguity with ADP, and you would think that the other guys in that backfield would have stronger ADPs than they do. So I'm still actually, like in redraft, I'm still throwing, like, you can get Carlos Hyde for basically free. Yeah. Right. So I'm still drafting him in redraft just because we know that this is a game of probability. And even Darwin Thompson, like I don't at all expect him to be anything, but when you're in the mid to late third round and into the fourth round, it doesn't really matter from a hit rate standpoint. Why not? So I think this is just a backfield that you want to invest in general, and I'm still okay with investing in a player like Damien Williams, who's going to cost more than what those other guys would.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. After the camp battles go out and we see who settles here, there's a lot of cheap players in this offense, and Kansas City is known for featuring a back, and that's why Damien Williams is so valuable now. But I'm with you, man. Carlos Hyde, he's proven he can catch the ball. So yeah, he can play in all facets. He's not an exciting player by any means, but I could see Kansas City just, putting it on him. If Damien Williams goes down, we're assuming Darwin Thompson filters in a little bit. James Williams was a prolific pass catcher in college. The assumption is that he would be involved. So there's a lot to like about this situation where you can buy guys. And, okay, there's a good one here. Speaking of buying, you got to buy one, sell one, marry one. I'm going to make it real awkward at the end. I'm going to give you 3 running backs. We're going to stick this topic. Derrick Henry, Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb.
Chubb.
Which one are you buying, selling, or marrying? JJ.
So I have no idea how to answer this question. Like what I have written in my notes is not even what I'm gonna say. Part of it is because I bought Nick Chubb today. Yeah.
All right.
I gave up T.Y. Hilton and Derrius Guice, and I got Nick Chubb, James Washington in the second. So I'm feeling good about that.
I like it.
So I got Nick Chubb, right? So I could say that I would buy him, but I think I'm gonna marry Nick Chubb.
He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah, like he seems like a pretty good dude. I get closer to Baker then, that way.
Oh.
Yeah. So I would probably marry Nick Chubb. We already talked about Nick Chubb. I think that he has that top 5 upside if things break his way. I guess I'm gonna. I hate that I'm about to say this. I might buy Leonard Fournette.
Oh.
And it's not because I believe in Leonard Fournette. It's really just from the perspective of I think that he has a better volume ceiling than Derrick Henry does. That's it. I don't think he's a better player, but at the end of the day, I'm not a big proponent that or thinker that talent matters that much at the running back position. And I'm very worried about Derrick Henry, who I would then, I guess, sell just because I have to here. I'm a little bit worried about what that offense is and where it's going, because there's question marks around Marcus Mariota. We don't know what kind of quarterback he is. I was higher on him than most going into last season. I'm not really buying into that anymore, even with the additions at wide receiver that they have. But Derrick Henry hasn't had 20 targets in a season yet. I mean, period. That's the fear, is the pass catching, right? Like we can create narratives in our mind that they have a new offensive coordinator, that maybe they'll be a little bit more pass friendly, all of that. But what evidence do we really have that Derrick Henry is all of a sudden going to be a 30 plus, 40 plus target player, where Leonard Fournette will be that when he's on the field. So that's really my reasoning for selling someone like Derrick Henry. But if you look at projections for Henry, I mean, they come out looking pretty nice because he has a lot of touchdown upside. So I think that you can really make the case for either guy with Fournette and Henry. I'm just going to side with Fournette.
I'm just surprised. I was going to say, Ryan, I'm surprised that JJ didn't pick Derrick Henry to marry. I mean, it just seems like he would protect you. He's got that.
That's true. That's true.
Right? Like, you need to be defended. You're a celebrity. You got to think about these things.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
All right, Ryan. Sorry I cut you off.
No. I was actually going to go back to the whole Derrick Henry, Marcus Mariota kind of relationship. Is there a narrative, or is there a reasonable, outcome that, Mariota again comes out despite the additions at wideout and kind of maybe their focus to throw it more? But is there a situation where Mariota just continues to kind of struggle and kind of fumble around, that they are just funneling the offensive game plans through Derrick Henry on the ground? Again, his ability as a pass catcher, the volume hasn't been there, but you kind of hit on the touchdown upside before. And again, I think there's a way that this offense, they just kind of cut bait real early, and next thing you know, it's Derrick Henry just getting force fed.
I think it's reasonable to if you look at what they did during Derrick Henry's great stretch at the end of basically the last 4 weeks of the season, or last 4 fantasy relevant weeks. Derrick Henry during that stretch was fantastic and doing his thing. But his target upside just wasn't there. I think he had like 3 targets across those 4 games. And so I have a hard time when we have 3 years worth of evidence now where Derrick Henry hasn't hit that 20 target mark. That's when I start to, we have a sample size of multiple coordinators and coaches and guys putting together that offensive game plan saying, look, Derrick Henry's on our team. He's a good running back, but we're not going to throw him the football. Or this is not an offense that we're trying to funnel the football to Derrick Henry. And that's really the fear. Whereas we've at least seen that target upside with Leonard Fournette. And that's really the difference for me.
Yeah. And Nate, to answer the question, bro, it's I'm gonna marry Nick Chubb as well. Obviously gonna marry Nick Chubb. And no, again, I think JJ's logic for the other two would be my thinking as well. I'm not a fan. We talked about it, I think, on multiple episodes. Somehow Leonard Fournette always comes up, Nate. But we're not the biggest believers in talent, but volume. But yeah, and JJ again, volume's going to be king though, and Fournette should get the looks at least early. So
who's Fournette's quarterback, Ryan?
I'm not.
We're not doing that this episode.
No. Next question.
Don't want to tarnish ourselves. Here's the thing. I don't feel like Derrick Henry lost any ground after the NFL draft, right? I think Derrick Henry's kind of sitting squarely where he was before. So I think you got to buy into the opportunity. I'm with you. He's just not involved in the passing game. Never really been involved in the passing game. Last year, we can call it a breakout. He had a couple monster games, and I hate to do this to people. I hate to go, well, if you go look at Derrick Henry's game log, he didn't do anything for 12 weeks. Then he had like 4 decent weeks. Dude, the guy rushed for 1,000 yards, and like 400 of them came in 4 games. More than that, like 600. I don't even know what it is. I'm trying to do rough math right now, guys. Okay, I wasn't ready for this. I didn't think I was going to have to do math on this show and talk and wear this hot-ass wig. The point is, he had like 10 weeks where he didn't do anything, right? And so the concern is, what is the volume going to be? He still had 215 carries. I think you gotta like him for the opportunity, but I'm with you, man. Leonard Fournette has a capable quarterback, I'm assuming, this year. 3rd year in the league. He had injuries last year. He had injuries, his first year. A lot of games missed in there. That's why you're buying Armstead, I'm assuming. Most people are, at least, we're looking into that. But look, man, Leonard Fournette had almost 50 targets in 13 games in 2017 with Blake Bortles, who was throwing footballs into the crowd as souvenirs. Not an accurate quarterback. So I feel like Nick Foles, I almost want to say it, Ryan, Nick Foles out there, that's going to change things for him. I'm with you. I'm buying Leonard Fournette. I'm marrying Derrick Henry.
Ooh.
And I'm selling high on Nick Chubb because you can get a ton for him. But I love Nick Chubb. I'm a value guy. I'm a value guy. What can I say?
Chubb was my sell. In my notes, he's my sell, and then I bought him today, so I couldn't do that to the people. I can't do that.
A total swing. Right. worried about picking one of the other two to marry. I mean, they're very alpha, but you'd be all right. All right, okay, let's talk about one more running back as a breakout. Came off an ACL tear, popped a big run in the preseason last year. Derrius Guice. Ryan wrote temperature check here. We need to get a heat check on Derrius Guice. What's the price? What's gonna happen? What's Adrian Peterson? What the hell's going on? What are any of us doing here, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, I just told you I traded away Guice. I think he's a pretty clear sell right now. And the main reason for that, actually, there's a lot of reasons for that. There's Adrian Peterson still exists. Look at his usage last year. They clearly like the dude. Adrian Peterson still exists in the short term. Chris Thompson's still there for another year. They drafted Bryce Love, so they have some competition at least in 2019, right? But then there's the knee injury, the knee issue. Then there's the fact that Washington's probably not going to be a very good offense, and we don't even know if Dwayne Haskins. I don't mind Dwayne Haskins. I just, we don't know what that offense is going to look like with him under center. They don't have wide receivers. I mean, they're not there. Even if you like Kelvin Harmon, obviously the draft capital is not there. So I know that you love him.
Yeah. All right.
But obviously the draft capital is not there. So there's some fear there. They're already talking down Josh Doxson, which is incredible when you look at the competition in the offense and that they're saying Josh Doxson's already not going to see that much volume in the offense.
What a weird career for Josh Doxson.
Yeah. That's not a good sign. So it's one of those things where, like, Derrius Guice, I don't see the breakout coming in 2019. So you're at least having to wait in 2020 till 2020. And his ADP and his value right now in Dynasty is basically where it was at when he was drafted last year. It's higher than I expected given all of these factors. And that's why I think Guice is just a sell right now.
Okay, wow, that's a tough pill to swallow right there. Ryan, come on, give me a cool breeze, Brian. What do we got?
As far as, again, I've been kind of combing the timeline, man. I guess the word out of Washington, Cam, man, is I guess Peterson came out and said he's looking at 2,000 yards on the ground this year, which is, I mean, again, if anyone's gonna do it, I guess it's all day, man. But again, as JJ said, man, Adrian's definitely there in at least the short term. This coaching staff definitely likes him. So the door wasn't open at all or very long for Derrius Guice. I loved him coming out, man. I loved the talent. Things just haven't really fallen into place in Washington for him as far as the injury goes, and now just that offense in general being completely, revamped. Dwayne Haskins under center. I like Haskins as well, but I think there's going to be a lot of kind of growing pains there. So as far as dynasty outlook, man, I think JJ covered it, and it's kind of looking grim.
Man, God, you guys are in lockstep on these things. Just like you're bringing me down. You guys are bringing me down. Here's the thing. AP said he's going to rush for 2,000 yards. Look, the last time AP did that was 2012. He did it on 348 carries. There's no way on God's green earth.
Bro, he's an alien. Let him.
That was 6 yards a carry. He's an alien, but he's 33 years old. Look.
I believe, bro. Put the hashtag up, the I believe hashtag, bro.
I'm not. Yeah. Put it on Facebook. The filter, with the underneath you. I believe. No, here's the thing though. I get what you guys are saying. You got to be concerned. 250 carries last year, 4.2 yards per carry. The guy's a legend. Yeah, he keeps on trucking. There's no receivers in this offense. I'm with you. Josh Doxson's almost as old as his coach. Don't know what Paul Richardson is. Drafted Terry McLaurin, who nobody's talking about. The guy gets no hype, right?
It's true.
We breeze right over him to talk about a guy that was borderline 7th round pick.
Mel Kiper loves Terry McLaurin, though.
Yeah.
That's all that matters, really.
Mel Kiper has never been wrong. I mean, so there was some investment there, but, and you got a rookie quarterback coming in. Odds are they're going to want to relieve him a little bit by putting the ball in AP's hands. I could see it. So AP is going to get some work. I think that there's going to be, a touch squeeze for Derrius Guice coming back. You touched on Chris Thompson, man. When that guy's on the field, he's electric. You cannot ignore him. I would be concerned. I guess I would sell Derrius Guice, but I'm not selling him yet because I know that those off-season videos of him cutting guys up, doing bag drills, breaking off, a spin move, 85 yards to the house with no defenders wearing pads, and guys looking off doing selfies. Like, that's going to drop, and everybody's going to want him again. So I'm just waiting for a little bit of a spike, just a little spike, and then I would be willing to sell Derrius Guice. So let's get to some of the ends of these questions. JJ, I don't want to keep you here all night. You got a young child.
She sleeps well.
Oh, good. Okay, we got like 20 more questions then. All right, this is another question. God, Ryan, you got periods and I
felt some type of way. Dude, we were getting joined by, this is JJ, bro. I had to get the punctuation and stuff really.
Yeah, true.
In order, you know what I mean?
Go, Ryan. You read this question, man. This is a run on for me here.
So all I want to know, we talked about a ton of running backs. I didn't realize how many running back questions I had. We talked about wide receivers. Let's talk tight end real quick before we wrap this thing up. As far as breakouts and as far as buzz, man, there's no louder buzz than OJ Howard. Are you an OJ Howard believer? We just talked about Chris Godwin. Talked about that Tampa Bay offense. Let's talk about OJ Howard a little bit. Are you buying?
Yeah, I'm in on OJ Howard. I am so over the offensive coordinator data push that we see all the time when that offensive coordinator data push happens without any context ever. And that's what we see with Bruce Arians and the use of his tight ends in his offenses. Bruce Arians has not had an OJ Howard type tight end in his offense. Let's just stop that. It's the same thing when people talk about Kyle Shanahan's ex-receiver and how Andre Johnson and Julio Jones saw 170 targets per season, and therefore Kyle Shanahan's ex-receiver sees a lot of volume. Well, it's because it's Andre Johnson and Julio Jones. But with OJ Howard, I mean, again, we've already talked about this Tampa Bay offense. It's going to be vertical. You only have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. There's OJ Howard just sitting there. He could easily see a 20% target share in that offense. That's not even close out of the question. And it's really weird. I've done a lot of research on kind of where to basically, similar to the late round quarterback strategy, but where to approach the tight end position and where to draft them. And what I found historically is that middle round tight ends suck. Like, if you're talking from a redraft standpoint, middle round tight ends are awful. And I'm talking rounds 5 through 8 or 9, more 5 through 8, let's say. This year is a lot different than what I've seen historically. And a lot of it is because I think people are just becoming sharper with who these tight end breakouts end up being. In the past, we've seen guys like Travis Kelce. We've seen Tyler Eifert's. We've seen these later round tight ends that are athletic freaks break out, and George Kittle, who have these later round price tags. I think people are realizing that these are the guys who can be true difference makers, and it's pushing the value up for a guy like OJ Howard, the ADP up for a guy like OJ Howard and Hunter Henry. And if you look at the ADPs of the late round tight ends now, they're all old guys. They're all old. They're all like Delaney Walker and Jimmy Graham and Jared Cook's kind of a mid-range guy, but they're the older guys who are a little bit more established, but we know don't have that upside, and people are chasing that upside more. But I think it's smart. I think that's the savvy thing to do at that position. And whenever you get into that range where OJ Howard's being drafted, the opportunity cost really isn't that significant, because there's a lot of there's not as much of a difference between like a typical wide receiver 2 and a 3 in these fantasy football times. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity cost really isn't the same as what we've seen historically either, and that's why I think it's way more okay to go after a guy like Howard or Hunter Henry in those mid rounds than I would have probably felt historically.
Ryan, what's your take? Give me something on OJ Howard. I mean, for God's sakes, you wrote the question.
I did, man. I love OJ Howard. I know people talked about his yards per reception. I think he was one of the more efficient tight ends out there, man. But there's other tight ends kind of in that range. Do you have any Vance McDonald takes? JJ, how about Evan Ingram in a post Odell Beckham Jr. world? I mean, are there any other tight ends that are kind of floating around, like you said, in that middle round that you are attracted to?
Yeah, I like Vance McDonald a lot. I just think that you're going to still see a fairly pass-heavy Steelers offense because of how they run that offense in neutral scripts. So you're going to see a fairly pass-heavy Steelers offense that's going to open up opportunities. I already talked about James Washington as a dart thrower, as a guy that you can invest in for pretty cheap. But I think Vance McDonald's in the same bucket. I mean, he flashed last year. after the big 3 tight ends. So you're looking at OJ Howard and Hunter Henry and Evan Ingram. I'd probably put Ingram third. I think that he'll come out in a projection looking better than those guys. But I just fear the quarterback change in New York that could happen, just the general touchdown upside there. And you need that scoring for a tight end to really ascend. So that's why, unless you're George Kittle and you just have insane yards after the catch ability. But that's really why I'd probably put Ingram below the other 2 guys there.
I mean, yeah, you got to be a fan of Vance McDonald, right? This is a team in the Steelers that ranked number 1 in pass attempts last year, and I don't think that's going to cool off necessarily anytime soon. Their identity is moving the ball through the air. Connor as a rusher obviously was good. There's mixed feelings about what James Conner is going to be in the future. Jalen Samuels behind him, all these guys. But as far as Vance McDonald in this offense, with the exit of Antonio Brown and his nearly 170 targets, Vance was already at 71 last year, so it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that we see him, or 72, that we see him get up near that, perhaps 85 to 100. I mean, this is a guy that could be more of a focal point in this offense going forward. Still 28 years old, so not one of the oldest tight ends in the league, as you alluded to earlier. So I'd be a fan of Vance McDonald also. JJ, look, man, we got a lot more questions on here. I don't want to wear you out. If you got time for one more, I'm going to hit you with one more.
I'm done. I can do 100 more, Nate.
I can do 100 more. Your stamina. It's just,
I could go on forever. I will have swamp ass by the end of it, but we'll be good.
I bought a small fan. It's blowing at my legs right now. I just hope it doesn't pick up on the mic. No, I know. Too many summers out here in Vancouver, Washington. It's a top place to live. Kyler Murray. Let's talk about him for a minute. I don't want to talk about Kyle Rudolph. We all know. Kyler Murray, is he an immediate top 10 quarterback going forward?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spicy.
I think it's easy. I think you could easily put him in like the QB 6, 7, 8 range.
I love that. You're
gonna have rushing upside. They're gonna run so many plays in that offense. It's just everything's there. I mean, we're getting we haven't seen the combination from a fantasy perspective necessarily of what this rushing upside could look like with efficiency throwing the football. Maybe we have with like an RG3 rookie year from like a statistical standpoint. But that's kind of what we're looking at with Kyler Murray. In this Cliff Kingsbury offense, I'm like think about like what an RG3 did his rookie year from a statistical standpoint, and then put that with an awesome offensive mind who is going to run a lot of plays. Not that RG3 didn't have an awesome offensive mind, but who's gonna run a lot of plays. I'm just really bullish on the whole offense. Can't wait. Drafted Andy Isabella. Can't get any better than that.
No. Also, yeah, notice Ryan that he doesn't say Hakeem Butler.
I don't mind Hakeem Butler, but
JJ, tell him about Butler popping in the projections earlier for you. I mean, pre-draft,
so,
right?
Well, the thing, yeah. The funny thing is that Butler and Isabella both were, because my model was it weighs final season production a lot heavier than other years, just because it's the most important, obviously. So he definitely popped, but Andy Isabella did too, and then you get the draft capital. And that I'm still shocked. I know this is not about Kyler Murray. I'm still shocked by the fact that people are drafting Hakeem Butler way ahead of Andy Isabella in rookie drafts right now. Yeah. Like, just completely shocked by that, because Andy Isabella is a good football player.
Yeah, he's a stud, man. I mean, and again, don't forget about Christian Kirk, babe. Let's not forget about
I'm
Christian
with you.
Kirk.
I'm with you.
We cannot. But yeah, Hakeem Butler, we don't know. And Ryan and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but why not? Let's fucking uncork it again.
Let's do it.
This offense has so many weapons. I mean, even down to Larry Fitzgerald, who's fallen off the bone at this point. Yeah. You got Butler, you got Kirk, you got Andy Isabella, you got David Johnson, who swears up and down that he's going to have 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. I don't know what he's not going to have. He claimed everything. He's going to win an NBA title. Point is, this is an offense that's got so many weapons in it. It's hard to really tell which one of these guys is going to pop with the volume. I think it could be a really diverse offense, especially if they plan on running a lot of plays, depending on what guys are fresh, what defenders are looking tired, if they're moving the ball downfield and they realize that they've got a mark on the defense. And Andy Isabella's the guy he's just beating the guy every time off the release. Maybe Isabella's targeted a little more. I still love Kirk, but you gotta love Andy Isabella in this offense, man. Big play receiver, downfield, intermediate, short area, has the wheels, the white Brandon Cooks, man. Put the ball in his hands, please. Put the ball in his hands.
Preach.
Ryan, as a huge Hakeem Butler fan, you were at the mountaintops, freezing.
I was there, shirtless.
Screaming, shirtless. So cocky.
Zero shirt. Dude, no, we much like Leonard Fournette, Hakeem Butler, for better or for worse, consistently comes up whenever we talk. But Kyler Murray a few weeks ago came out and said the quote that I shared probably last week. He's never had a target like Hakeem Butler. Not many quarterbacks have had a target like Hakeem Butler. So there's a lot to like there, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of intriguing options. You just ran down the entire depth chart. Not to mention David Johnson, who I don't know if he got lost in the shuffle, whatever the case may be, but I'm buying David Johnson in this offense. JJ did a good job before outlining the whole rushing ability and the Konami code that Kyler Murray kind of brings to the table. So a lot to like about this Arizona Cardinals offense.
Again, Ryan, man, I'm looking at this next question and I'm hesitant because I'm seeing hashtags, parentheses. There's a semicolon in there.
I threw a semicolon in there. I did.
3 question marks. I'm so lost. There's no periods between the IE. Ryan, you read this question.
I got. You got me all flustered here, Nato, man. Yeah, there's definitely a hashtag in there. So Scott Barrett dropped an article about a week or two ago about his kind of most targeted quarterbacks as far as early best ball type drafts, and he kind of outlined again the Konami code. You want quarterbacks with this rushing upside. So JJ, we're talking about, of course, Lamar Jackson, the Russell Wilsons, the Cam Newtons, the Kyler Murrays, of course. Do you have any kind of strong feelings towards any of these guys? If you want to kind of single out, a name or two and kind of sell us on one of them.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, shout out to Rich Rebar, who came up with the Konami code before probably half the people listening to this were even born. I mean, he came up. He wrote that on Number Fire. He wrote an article on Number Fire before. But yeah, so I mean, look, I don't really care who folks are pinpointing as long as they have that rushing upside. So I think I should get that out of the way. I think Dak is really intriguing with the coordinator change and what he did with Amari Cooper when Amari Cooper got to Dallas last year. I mean, Dak is, I will say, I don't like when people throw out, like, the people did this with Phillip Rivers for years. They're like, Phillip Rivers hasn't been worse than, or has been between a QB8 and a QB12 like for the last 8 years. Like, there was a stat that they would throw out there, and it's like, I don't want that out of my quarterback. Like, that's completely replaceable production. That does not matter, right? And people do that with Dak Prescott to a degree too. But I do think that what we saw out of Dak in that split when Amari got there last year and then the coordinator change, I think that's enough upside to want to target a guy like him. I'm not really buying into the Ravens offense. From the standpoint of, I really think that what Baltimore did last year was not sustainable at all. From an offensive standpoint, because of their efficiency running the football, but also defense is not sticky year over year. The elite defenses usually regress a bit, and so I worry about the Ravens playing in more negative game scripts, and that's going to affect the way that offense runs. But you're really striving for upside here. What if Lamar Jackson gets it together? What if these new weapons help him out? That's really all you're doing. You have to remove any downside when you're drafting these quarterbacks late. And with Lamar Jackson, you can see the upsides there. You can see that he has, legit QB3 upside. I mean, it's there, given what he can do with his legs. So that's really why I think that he should still be on your radar as well. So I'd probably pinpoint those two guys as the two Konami code related players that I'd be drafting.
I like it.
No,
I like it.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm with you. I have concerns about Jackson as a passer.
Same.
We're asking him to take a big step forward.
Yep.
the step forward that we would consider the floor of acceptable is a big step forward from Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Like he's looking up at that like, oh, holy shit, that's a long way up. I don't think I'm going to get there. I don't know. And the same with Josh Allen. Both of those guys have the rushing upside. You've got to love that. Not to the same degree Buffalo doing any investing, but we saw Brown, Marquise Brown get drafted to Baltimore, first wide receiver off the board. Questions about his size, I guess not questions about his speed, but coming off of an injury and a surgery, they added him to this offense. They drafted Miles Boykin, so they invested a little bit into this offense, and you do have to like that. But I've just got so many concerns. You got to hope that Lamar can just put it downfield and that him and Marquise Brown can play pass and catch, because I'm just really not sure what else you're going to get out of him, because I just don't see that step forward coming. All right, last question, man. We're going to wrap this thing up. We're going to gift wrap it for America. One last time. Let's talk about a few rookies. Immediate impact. Quick return on investment. These are Ryan's words. There's a lot of hyphens in here. He hyphenated
periods,
a word.
commas, a lot of
colons,
comments. Yep.
Wow, this guy, he's good. He should be an editor. You guys, can you hire him?
We'll bring you on.
We'll bring you on. All right, let's talk just real quick. Let's talk about a favorite wide receiver or two from this rookie class. Who do you got?
My favorite wide receiver from the rookie class is N'Keal Harry, and I think that he can absolutely produce year one. My initial projection on draft day, I remember, was like 90 targets or something like that, because I was doing like a live blog, and it was so much higher than where other people were at with his initial projection. But there's really, there's not much in his way, right? To see the field. I know that there have been reports that he's struggling and yada yada, and people are gonna play into that because there's confirmation bias because of the separation issues and all that. But N'Keal Harry, I think, is still should be the number one rookie wide receiver drafted this year. I still, I know that you, Nate, were into Paris Campbell heading into the draft. I was on the fence. It's just one of those players where, we didn't know what he would be able to do down the field, right? Because they didn't use him that way very often. I think that the ability was there. It's just that we didn't have that sample size, right? But the thing with Paris Campbell is this landing spot is freaking amazing, right? Yeah. Yep. Because you not only have the offensive system that's going to throw a lot of passes, and you have a good quarterback in Andrew Luck, but you have all of the pieces. At least in 2019, you have sort of the guy who can stretch the field in T.Y. Hilton, sort of more of the possession guy in Devin Funchess, and then Paris Campbell can play that same style that he did at Ohio State in this offense for Indianapolis. I think Paris Campbell might hurt like someone like Nyheim Hines in a way, indirectly from a projection standpoint. So I like Paris Campbell a lot rookie year. So those are the two guys that I would be targeting at wide receiver.
Ryan, why don't you hit me with one? We've talked about so many rookies on this show, but Ryan, give me one. Give me one of your guys that's kind of a sleeper guy that you've got some expectations for.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's a sleeper, but going back to JJ was talking about draft capital, Mecole Hardman, man.
Yes.
The Chiefs jumped up to grab Mecole Hardman, man. And again, the latest buzz is the DA is not investigating Tyreek Hill, so that whole case, the whole off-field stuff, still in the NFL's hands. So no one really knows how that's going to shake out. But there was obviously some sort of attraction there with Hardman. He's not going to be Tyreek Hill, but he does have similar elements to his game, especially pairing, of course, with Patty Mahomes in that Andy Reid offense. It's really hard not to like Mecole Hardman.
And the thing about Tyreek Hill, it's not like Tyreek Hill had a ton of production or anything. It's not like or that coming out of college he played at big schools or anything to that nature, right? So when you look at Mecole Hardman, this is a guy that didn't have eye-catching statistics, but he had the physical traits. He had the speed. He was the guy on draft day, for better or for worse, that most of us saw him get drafted, and we were like, who is Mecole Hardman?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how did he go in the second round? A.J. Brown goes off the board. Debo went a little high. A.J. goes off the board. You're like, oh, yeah, okay, A.J. Brown. And then Mecole Hardman goes off the board, and you're like, what? How did that happen? What's up with Tyreek Hill? And then then it starts churning the machine. Oh, Tyreek Hill must be out, this or that. I think you have to be a fan of what he brings to an already very explosive offense that has playmakers on all levels. He adds a dynamic that Tyreek Hill did have, and for better or worse, whatever Tyreek Hill ends up doing in Kansas City, I think they do look at Hardman like he could be kind of a 1B option to that skill set. Now, I'm not saying that is opportunity, but I think they look at him and they look at Tyreek and they go, okay, if things with Tyreek didn't work out, it was a hedge, right? It was a hedge against Tyreek Hill, and we still don't know. But Mecole Hardman's definitely one of those guys that I'm trying to draft because it's been touched on. He's got the draft capital. Aside from going to the Colts, this is one of the best landing spots you could have gone to. I mean, it's a high-powered offense. Again, players on all levels, a creative offensive coordinator and head coach, a quarterback that can throw it from every angle. You know, it gets a rapport with the receiver, locks on, makes big plays. I'm with you. This is the guy I was going to say as well. You kind of stole it from me, man. So I don't know, man. I'm a fan of Campbell. I'm a fan of Hardman. I'm a fan of a lot of these guys. I just think that this draft class has gotten such a weird narrative to it that it's a garbage draft class. But a lot of these guys landed in intriguing spots. A.J. Brown in Tennessee, I don't know. That one stung a little bit. But Debo to San Francisco, you can't hate that. N'Keal to the Patriots. I mean, Marquise Brown, yes, he went to Baltimore. We don't love Lamar Jackson, but who's his competition, right? The guy should see a boatload of targets if he's healthy. Paris Campbell goes to a good spot. Arcega-Whiteside might have to wait a little bit, but he got drafted highly. He went to a good offense. I just feel like there's so many guys that went to good spots. They may not be prospects that people were in love with coming out of college, but you got to love a lot of these spots, man. And I wouldn't sleep on a lot of these wide receivers. JJ, last question. Last question. We have not talked about enough running backs yet. We have not talked about enough running backs. So let's talk about running backs for a second. In this draft class, give me one, give me two if you got it. Favorite rookie running backs, the guys you think are most likely to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, I'll give you two guys that. So one of them I think is just being undervalued, at least in the short-term role, and maybe even to a degree you could argue that his overall dynasty, his rookie ADP is a little too low. I don't mind Miles Sanders' landing spot. I think that there's going to be some sort of committee there. That's fine. But I also think that I know that Philly hasn't had a running back consistently stay healthy under this Peterson regime. So the last 3 years, the only guys that have played a full 16 games have been LeGarrette Blount and Wendell Smallwood. So obviously they haven't even had the opportunity to really feature a running back. They spend good draft capital on them. And if you look at the criteria, this is for a single season, so this is more redraft focused. But if you look at the criteria for a breakout running back, I did a study on this last offseason. The criteria is that they're rarely handcuffs when they break out. Miles Sanders is not a handcuff. They're part of ambiguous backfields. Right now, he's part of an ambiguous backfield with Jordan Howard there. They're pass catchers. He was a decent pass. He had a pretty good reception share in college. And they're in good offenses. He literally checks every single box for a guy who could break out. And I'm just a little surprised. I would say that I'm more surprised by his redraft value, and I think that people are just scared off because of the committee approach. But Miles Sanders is someone that I'm pretty intrigued by overall. And then the other one who I wasn't necessarily, I was just whatever with him entering the draft. I wanted him to find an interesting landing spot. I think he's an intriguing prospect. It's Justice Hill.
Okay.
Just took mine, bro. Just took mine.
Did I? Who did you think I was gonna say?
I thought you were gonna say Darrell Henderson. It felt like you were building up to it. Okay,
no, the Darrell Henderson stuff, like that. I'm in on Darrell Henderson. Like he's, okay. I'm there. I'm there.
Good,
I'm there.
good.
I just want to give like a little bit of a slightly deeper.
Yeah, go Justice Hill, man. This is great. Let's
talk about it. Let's talk about it.
So with Justice Hill is probably gonna be my highest owned player in rookie drafts this year. By the way, he's just always there, like in the mid late second. Like I'm just auto drafting Justice Hill. Decent draft capital. I wish he was a day 2 guy, but he was almost a day 2 guy. But then you have an offense that's gonna run the football a lot. If you look at the number of running back attempts that team had after Lamar Jackson took over, Gus Edwards was 3rd in the NFL in rush attempts after Lamar Jackson took over, behind only Chris Carson and Ezekiel Elliott. So there's going to be opportunity on the ground in that offense, and I think that he complements what they have in that offense really well, which, from Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, whoever you want, let's just say Mark Ingram, Justice Hill complements that. And then there's also the fact that yeah, there's not going to be that much passing volume to go around, but there's also not many good pass catchers in that offense in general. And if they can get creative with him and kind of make him, give him like an Alvin Kamara type role in that offense, I think that there is at least some upside from a fantasy standpoint. So Justice Hill, a really, really interesting prospect, obviously has the athleticism and the speed. I just think the complement is definitely there in that Ravens offense. So he's someone that I'm targeting a lot.
All right, Ryan, you said yours got stolen, so I'm going to jump on a guy here because I want to add a little bit of depth to it, a little something different. Let's talk about Devin Singletary for a second here. This is an interesting name. No, hold on.
This is so tough, dude. This is this is like the toughest situation to like evaluate right now.
I know. So let's look at this.
I like it. Yeah.
He's got the draft capital, right? He goes in the 3rd round. He's 1 pick behind David Montgomery. Goes to the Buffalo Bills to a depth chart that for other terms, I mean, you've got LaShawn McCoy there. I don't know what's left in the tank. He's been good. It's worked out for him. He's not a big back. Devin Singletary's not a big back. You got Frank Gore there. TJ Yeldon gets signed there. You got a lot of guys that feel either aged or not like a feature back anymore, at least to this point. I mean, I can see LaShawn McCoy for redraft purposes, for short-term purposes. You like him there. But when you look at Devin Singletary, not 22 years old yet, athleticism, dog crap. We all know. Look, we all know, not a good athlete, but when you watch him on tape, seems so different. A lot of pop. This was a guy that in college carried the ball a ton, man. Maybe he doesn't have tread left on the tires. That would be the argument. But he also validated that he can carry the load for an offense. He had a season where he had, 26 receptions, the 32 touchdown season. The guy's got a nose for the end zone. This is a player that in college, a lot of guys were high on. Not until the NFL draft, not until the NFL combine did the culture and the thought process and the groupthink on him really shift. This was a guy that in the beginning was rated way higher in this draft class as a running back, and suddenly this tumble happened, and the Buffalo Bills ignored it. Still, 3rd round draft capital is big draft capital for a running back, especially going to a situation where he's got aged incumbent running backs in front of him. TJ Yeldon, who's never run away with any job ever in his life, and I'm not sure that this is going to be the one he runs away with. And 3rd round draft capital. So I'm a fan of his situation. I hate his athleticism, JJ.
Yeah.
Wash over me.
It's so hard, right? It's so hard because the draft capital's there. That's really, really important. But I just have such a hard time with Singletary as a prospect. And the main reason, aside from the fact that he doesn't have the size, doesn't have the athleticism, well, there's 2 things. From a production profile standpoint, I don't like seeing guys who are ceding receiving work as they get through their college seasons, and that's what was happening with Devin Singletary. It wasn't the groundwork was there, it was fine, but he was starting to see fewer and fewer receptions in a lower and lower reception share as his career went on in college. But the one thing that I worry about is a lot of the people that were into Devin Singletary were most definitely film-based evaluators, and I worry that when you're watching a guy who went to a smaller program, that he's going to naturally just look a little bit better than he probably is, and it's naturally hard to just adjust for that, right? He also had a really crappy offensive line. I think we should throw that out there. But that's kind of what I'm stuck on, is that like if he were a Power 5 running back, I would probably feel a little bit better. But and if he had, because the production's not bad, but I just worry about the fact that like if these film-based evaluators, who are really the ones who are in Devin Singletary's corner most, I mean, some guys, some very, very good evaluators had him at RB1 in this class, like legitimately. And you have to at least look at that and be like, okay, maybe this guy's legit. But I just think it might be one of those cases where smaller school, smaller program, it might just elevate him a little bit and make him look a little bit better. But the draft capital is there, which is why I still think he's fine if you can get him in the 2nd round of rookie drafts.
Ryan, you want to add anything to Singletary? I don't know where you were on him. I don't think you loved Singletary, did you?
No, I think JJ kind of, it it was a roller coaster ride for Singletary, for better or for worse. We talked about this probably around the draft too, Nate, is, the combine matters. Maybe some people, don't evaluate it, don't factor in much at all, or maybe some factor in too much, but there is an extent where obviously the testing and stuff matters. Those results from that type of player, given his build, Singletary needed that, above average athleticism to kind of really carry him to Sundays here. So he doesn't have that. He was a player that I kind of was higher on to start things off, only because, again, the film was fun. He was a highlight reel. To JJ's point, was that against, an easier schedule, conference competition, all that stuff. That stuff does come into play as well. The situation he landed in, as you were sharing, Nate, again, between Frank Gores and Shady McCoy, maybe on his last leg or so. So there is a path that could open up there. But it's a path that's just, it's a bit more murky,
As a redraft option, he's a late round dart throw. The problem is he's going to have to probably leapfrog somebody. Somebody else is going to have to get injured. I mean, really, it's going to have to take an injury and him passing somebody, because the odds of Frank Gore, who never gets hurt, and LaShawn McCoy getting hurt, and then TJ Yeldon, who gets signed there, losing his work to Devin Singletary, it's a long play, if nothing else, if you're buying him. And I think a lot of people are going to look at it that way, because either you look at the round he was drafted in and you draft based on that, or you look at the depth chart in front of him and you draft based on that. If you draft based on the depth chart, you're probably not touching him till late second round, especially in a class that had as many good athletes as this did, wide receivers, third round guys, fourth round guys. I'm definitely not taking him. I don't know, man. I'm not taking him behind Riley Ridley, though. That's for goddamn sure. Not a fan of Ridley. I forgot. We got to squeeze one of those in. But yeah, it's an interesting situation, as JJ touched on. And I think it's just a name that I think more people need to pay attention to, because the path is there. It's just of all running backs, this may be one of the toughest ones, as funny as it sounds, because he's got two guys well into their 30s in front of him, and a running back who just never, stole the show anywhere else. So, all right, JJ, man, you made it through the gauntlet. This is incredible.
I'm exhausted, bro.
Few people can do this.
Let's run it back. Let's run it back.
Where's the gift, Ryan?
I can't.
He can't do it right now.
Yeah.
Oh man, spent. JJ, dude, you're a legend, man. You came in guns blazing,
appreciate you,
no
JJ,
fear.
Man.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Yeah, dude, this was fun, man. We never thought JJ would make time for us. You're a busy guy, got a young child, a family. You got that shelf behind you. You're constantly reorganizing the knickknacks.
It's true. This is true.
Busy life.
It's true. That's actually, that takes up 18 hours of my day. So.
it's a very busy
shelf
life.
Maintenance.
Yes. I bill that to FanDuel.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really impressive. Well, dude, thanks for coming on, man. People, check him out. Late Round QB on Twitter. Do you want to shout out your podcast or what? I mean, I'm sure they listen.
Yeah,
but
sure. Yeah, Late Round podcast, and then in season I do Living the Stream as well with easily probably the worst co-host that's ever done a podcast.
Oh wow, that's unfortunate. All right, man. Well, hey, dude, we appreciate it. If you like the show, man, rate it, give us some reviews, let us know what you think. Tell me if I suck. Tell me if Ryan sucked.
Yeah, please.
Sometimes
I
wonder.
let us know.
It's hard to tell over here with an unbiased ear.
Mm-hmm.
All right, JJ, thanks for coming on, man, and hopefully we'll have you back on again.
Sounds great.